Through the prayers of Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Today, July 19th of the civil calendar, is at the same time July 6th of the church calendar. The traditional Orthodox Church today commemorates our Holy Father, Jesus the Great, an Egyptian by birth. He lived at first in Kyris, then, after St. Antony's death, settled on a desert mountain on which Antony had earlier lived in asceticism, and which was named after him. He learned humility through great struggles with himself, becoming meek and guiltless as a lamb. Therefore, God gave him the great gift of healing the sick, driving out unclean spirits and raising the dead. Jesus lived in the desert for 60 years and was a font of living wisdom for all the monks and lay folk who came to him for advice. At the time of his death, his face shone like the sun. The monks stood around him and marveled at this sight. And when the saint gave up his soul, the whole chamber was filled with a wonderful fragrance. He entered into rest in old age in about 429. St. Cecil taught his monks, when temptation comes to a man, that man must give himself over to the will of God, and acknowledge that the temptation comes upon him because of his sins. If something good comes to pass, he must acknowledge that it comes about by the providence of God. A monk asked him, "How can I please God and be saved?" The saint replied, "If you desire to please God, withdraw from the world, separate yourself from the earth, leave aside creation and draw near to the Creator. Unite yourself to God with prayers and tears, and you will find rest in this world and in the next." A monk asked Jesus, "How can I acquire humility?" The saint replied, "When a man learns to regard every man as better than himself, if he thus acquires humility." Amon complained to Jesus that he could not memorize the wise saying that he had read, to be able to quote them in conversation with others. The saint replied, "It is not necessary. That which is necessary is to acquire purity of mind and to speak from this purity, placing one's hope in God." Again, today we commemorate the holy martyrs Marinus and Martha with their sons Odifas and Habakkuk, the priest, Valentine, Cyrenius, Asterius, and many others. They all suffered in the time of Emperor Claudius Flavius in Rome in the year 269. Marinus and Martha were rich Persians who had sold all their goods in Persia and gone with their sons to Rome to venerate the relic of holy apostles and other martyrs. When the emperor asked them why they had come such distance, forsaking their household goods, to see the dead in Rome, they replied, "We are servants of Christ and are come to venerate the holy apostles, whose immortal souls are alive with God, that they may be our intercessors with Christ our God." Cyrenus was thrown into the Tiber, whence Marianus retrieved his body and buried it. The priest Valentine was committed to a general Asterius, whose task it was to urge him to deny Christ. But Valentine healed Asterius' daughter, who had been blind for 2 years, by his prayer, and then baptized Asterius and his whole household. These all, in diverse ways, received torture and death for Christ the Lord, who welcomed them into his immortal kingdom to rejoice eternally. The finding of the relic of St. Juliana, the Virgin, the daughter of a prince of Oshaksk. Juliana died in about 1540 as a girl of 16. 200 years after her death, some men digging a grave near the great church in the monastery in Kiev found the relics of this holy virgin, whole and incorrupt, as though she had just fallen asleep. Many wonders were worked over these relics, and Juliana herself appeared several times to various people. The famous Peter Mogila was one of those who saw her. The holy martyr Lucy. The barbarian king Ostitius made her his slave in Campania. He wanted to have her live with him, but she resisted. The king left her in peace to live in asceticism. She brought the king to the faith because by her prayer he was victorious in battle. Later, they both suffered for Christ in Rome in about 300. For consideration, when do we know that there is life after death? We know from Christ the Lord, on the foundation of his words, his resurrection, and his appearance after his death. Philosophers who recognize life after death accept it on the foundation of their own reasoning, but we recognize it on the foundation of experience, especially the experience of holy men and women who were unable to proclaim a lie. When St. Jesus lay on his deathbed, his face was suffused with light. The monks, his disciples, stood around him. Suddenly, the saint's gaze became intent, and he said, "Behold, the prophet are coming." His countenance became yet more radiant, and he said, "Behold, the apostles are coming." Then he said, "Behold, the angels are coming to take my soul." Finally, his face shone like the sun, and all were in great fear. Then the elder said, "Behold, the Lord is coming. Look, all of you, listen. He is saying, 'Bring me the chosen vessel from out of the wilderness.'" After this, the saint gave up his soul. How many similar visions have there been, and all by reliable witness? Thank you, and I pray that the good Lord will bless you. Please help us to share to as many as possible number of people for the spiritual upliftment of their souls. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I one true God. Amen.